Hi, I'm Kaitlyn Jensen, and this is my legal and ethical disposition video for the end of this class. So, we talked about evidence based practices and using those to assess students with autism. And the big thing that I learned from it, and in an ethical and legal aspect, is that everything must be age appropriate and it must align with their goals and what their goals are. You have to be culturally responsive to parents and families because every family and every child is different. They may have different beliefs and different expectations. So, in order to be effective in those evidence based practices, it is ethically right to know the family and to respect what they would like. When I learned about autism, I learned that the characteristics are usually figured out before the age of 3, and that it talks about behavioral excess and behavioral defects. Excess is when they do a behavior a lot, like a repetitive tick or repetitive behavior, and behavior deficits is just they don't know how to act for their age. In order to be classified, it has to get in the way of learning and not letting the child be successful in their current setting. When ethically, I will make sure that my students have access to the supports that they need in the school. I always advocate for my students, whether it's a gen ed student or a special ed student, and I make sure that they get the services that they need, whether it be speech, OT, PT, counseling, anything. I advocate for them. And before I advocate for them, I always try to make sure I talk to the parents and see what their concerns are at home. Well, the parents, when I talk to them, I always make sure that they know what services are available to them and that they're involved in the process of any intervention or anything that may impact their child's learning, which I think is very important. For evidence based practices, I learned a lot about the validity of them and how they need to be valid and successful for people of the same age as the child that you teach. I know that by looking at evidence-based practices, it is important to make sure that the students in the practice or the intervention are the same or similar to the child that you teach, and that you need to make sure that a lot of similarities are there in order to achieve your goal. I also know that teachers need to be trained in that practice, and if they're not trained correctly, then they will not be successful. Because in order to be successful, it has to be implemented the same way. As educators, we have a responsibility to our students and to our students' families to make sure that we help them be the best that they can be. And if we know that something is not right or we know something's not working, then we need to say something. We have the responsibility, the moral ethics of a teacher to help these kids be successful in school and post secondary. I teach 11th grade English, so I am really for the post secondary. We're working a lot with the state with our BIPs and our FBAs and all that. So I am very passionate about the post secondary aspect with the behaviors. After this class, I learned the importance of knowing your students and their families. I know it was important before, but I think now it's even more important and embedded in my brain. And I think that I am more comfortable with looking at evidence based practices and how they can help my students that I service today. We also have a moral and ethical responsibility to parents and to their families to make sure that we give them resources that they might not know exist or might not have access to. I take my role as an educator very seriously, and I really enjoyed learning more about evidence based practices and the legal aspects and moral code. Thank you.